We all get emotionally triggered, at least sometimes. And when I say emotionally triggered, I'm not talking about triggered in like the PTSD sense of the word. I'm talking more about the times when big emotions come up, something happens and you have a big, strong emotional reaction to it. Maybe it feels something like a flipping feeling in your belly, or like a tight feeling in your chest, or a hot feeling in your head, that it just sort of overcomes you and you're having a big emotional reaction to something. And you don't know what to do about it. You don't know how to handle it. You don't know how to deal with this. It feels uncomfortable. Maybe it even feels really challenging to have that feeling, but you don't want to react to it. You don't want to freak out about it. You don't want to say something you're going to regret because you're having these big emotions come up. You want to be able to manage it better. You want to be able to move through it better and hopefully decrease the frequency or intensity of these triggers that you seem to be having more often than you want to be. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to talk to you about managing your triggers, about what to do with them. That is going to both help you move through it more smoothly. So when you are emotionally triggered, it doesn't knock you out for, an hour or 5 hours or a day where you're just feeling so just in your head about whatever it is that happened and you can't move past it, and it kind of just takes you out. And we're going to talk about how to move through it more quickly, so that it's not going to ruin a few hours or even a day or even a few days if something happens that really, triggers you. And then we're also going to talk about and learning that by doing this, we're going to decrease the frequency of ourselves getting triggered, because we're going to be creating a more calm and grounded brain through these steps that I'm going to teach you. We're going to be creating that in the process. You with me? We're going to get into this in just a minute. If you're new here, welcome to our incredible little corner on the internet. Take a second and introduce yourself in the comment section below. If you're back again, it is always good to have you. To my shifters, special hello to you. You know who you are. You can make yourself known in the comments. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. The button's about right down there. And also like the video if by the end of it you get something out of it. Either way, my name is Kristina, and I am a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, and the creator of my membership community, the Shift Society, that you can get more information about in the comment section below. Sorry, not in the comment section below, in the description below. And I am also the author of my new book, Drive Your Own Darn Bus: How to Get Mentally Strong and into the Driver's Seat of Your Own Life. You can pick that up every major book retailer, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Indigo, kind of wherever. It's available now for you. I help heart-centered humans break through the crap that is holding them back so that they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And getting emotionally triggered really is something that can hold us back, especially if it's happening often. And especially if we are reacting to our triggers in ways that we are not happy about, that often end up making us feel worse afterwards. So if you get triggered and then you lash out, or you get really angry, or you lose your temper, or maybe you completely retreat and, avoid people and, go into that kind of flight mode, right? Because what's happening when we're triggered is it's triggering our fight, flight, or freeze response. It's triggering like a fear response in our bodies. That's why you get this big surge of emotion that comes up, because your body perceives some kind of threat or danger. And so it's getting ready to either fight it out, right? Freak out, fight it out, say things we regret, we don't mean, say things we end up going to regret and feel guilty about later, and then have to go back and try to repair the damage that we did when we were triggered and help to repair that relationship. Or we flight, we run away. And we just avoid the whole thing, avoid any conflict, avoid our feelings, avoid dealing with anything. And then we end up sort of building up that anger and resentment. We turn a lot of those emotions inward, which can then result and lead to things like big problems with anxiety and depression, because we're repressing our emotions and running away from them. Or we can go into freeze mode, where we just stand there kind of stunned, not knowing what to do, and just like not dealing with anything, not making anything any better, just not doing anything. And so that's often what happens when we're triggered, because it triggers this fight, flight, or freeze response. And so in all these situations, we're usually not proud of ourselves for how we handle it. So then we can go into another dose of making ourselves feel even worse after we've been triggered, by judging or blaming or criticizing ourselves for how we handle it. Like, why did you freak out? Why did you let that person get to you? Why did you like not handle yourself better? Why did you just like get sucked into that and say that? And that was, so unkind, or that was so like not cool of you at all. And what's wrong with you? And getting really mad at yourself for that. Or if you're like, you just ran away and you didn't deal with anything. Why can't you ever face anything? You're just gonna have to stuff your emotions and just keep everything in, and, just going through feeling terrible like that. Or you freeze. You're like, why did you just freeze? Why didn't you do anything? Why did you just let that happen? Why didn't you say anything? Right? And just sort of judging and blaming ourselves for that, which can make it all the more worse. So we want to actually deal with our triggers. We want to learn how to manage ourselves when we are being triggered. And again, when I talk about triggers, I'm talking about something happens, and then in an unconscious way, we have an evaluation of what happened. We have thoughts about what happened, and that's what triggers the big emotion, right? Like, let's say someone in a meeting just says to you something like, Julia contributed this part of the project, but we need to look over it because it needs some extra work. And then you have this big surge of emotion that comes up. You feel kind of overwhelmed with emotions after this person said this. But why is that happening? And it's because you have thoughts that are unconscious about what the person says that is triggering something deeper. Triggering a past wound, triggering a deep insecurity, triggering something that you have been struggling with. It's hitting a sore spot. Because the truth is, it's not what they said that triggered you. It's what you thought about what they said that brought up these big emotions. Now, again, this is happening unconsciously. You might not even be aware they are having these thoughts about it, because what they said was just, we need to look at her contribution again, which you could think of. Your thoughts could be, oh my gosh, they think I'm an idiot. They think I'm a failure. You see, I was right. Like, I can't do anything right, and nothing is ever good enough. And then you're going to, it's going to have these triggers. It's going to hit like an insecurity, a sore spot. But somebody else who doesn't have that same trigger could be like, okay, yeah, that's great. Let's look at it. See how we can round it out. Let's see how we can make it better. Okay, yeah, I'd love to hear other people's feedback, because, the more eyes on something and the more ideas, the better it can be. You see how that works? So that is the good news, that when we are getting emotionally triggered, it has more to do with us and our reaction and our thoughts and our interpretations than it does with the thing that's actually happening, which is good news, because it means we can do something about it without having to control everyone and everything around us so that they never, do or say anything that upsets us or pisses us off. Because, that would be a very lofty goal to try to do, to control everyone and everything, to always fit exactly what we want when we want it, depending on the day, the hour, or our mood. So let's talk about dealing with triggers and what to do so that we can go through life feeling more in charge of our minds and emotions. The first thing that we need to do when you are feeling triggered is we have to slow everything down, because you're getting this big surge, right? All the blood is rushing kind of away from your brain, away from your logical thought and into your body to get you ready to do the fight, flight, or freeze. And so what we need to do is we need to step in there and regulate ourselves physically first. This is the most important step, because it's the foundational step. You can't do a whole lot else in dealing with triggers until you do this. Simple, but it does take some work to start to catch it and do this before the trigger kind of runs away with you. So the first step is to just take a deep breath, a deep, full breath. You want to focus on expanding out of your ribs, opening up your diaphragm. And that is that's where you want to start with. That is deep diaphragmatic breathing, just to kind of calm things down, get oxygen, and with that oxygen carries blood. So oxygen and blood back up to your brain, so that you can get out of this fight or flight mode and back into conscious being mode, back into conscious thought, conscious existent mode. So take a few deep breaths. And with that, it's giving us pause, right? It's allowing us to just take some space between what happened and our reaction to what happened. And we need that space instead of just reacting to it, right? Because then if we just react to the trigger based on this like surge of emotion that's causing this fight or flight response, this fear response, we are often going to turn into a little bit of beast mode, right? Like when we're afraid, we lash out, or again, run away, which is also just an avoidance strategy, and it doesn't help the situation at all and can often make it worse. Or we just sort of freeze up and do nothing, which again, not helpful. But when we're having this big surge of emotion, if we act on that immediately, it's going to be something that is not going to be helpful. Because again, we're in fear, so we're going into self-protective mode, which can often result in something unhealthy, unhelpful, or even hurtful or harmful in that reaction. So we need to take that pause and just collect yourself. Just take a moment and notice what's going on. Right? Notice the sensations in your body and just be like, okay, feeling triggered right now. I feel this maybe flipping feeling in my stomach, this tight feeling in my chest. Maybe I feel even like lightheaded. I feel a little bit like woozy, like kind of dizzy. What's going on right now? I just got hit with something big. Something just impacted me. And really take that time to just do that immediacy. Right? That's what it's called. Just getting yourself immediately into what's happening. Noticing what's happening in your body, in your brain. Be like, I've got all these thoughts going on. I've got all these feelings in my body. This big stuff is coming up for me right now. Okay. And even that just in of itself is bringing you back to conscious awareness, because you're not just unconsciously, flying off the handle or, reacting unreasonably to something or just like going crazy about something. You are not doing that unconsciously. You're bringing yourself back to consciousness by noticing and paying attention to what's going on. And then what we want to do, what we don't want to do is then go into self-judgment and self-criticism, saying things like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? Why are you letting this bother you? Why are you so pathetic? Why are you letting this get to you? Why are you taking this personally? Why are you stressing about this? This is so dumb. Right? And you start to judge yourself because of it. And you're like, oh, this is so ridiculous. What's wrong with you? And we go into that self-criticism, which makes us feel for 10 points better or worse. So we know that when we go into that self-criticism mode, when we are already struggling, it just makes us feel worse. It doesn't help. It doesn't allow us to move through it. It doesn't do anything serving or productive. And so instead of going into self-criticism, we go into self-compassion mode. It's understandable you're feeling shame right now because you worked hard on that project, and hearing that it's not up to snuff is bringing up feelings of you not being good enough. It's bringing up insecurities about you not making the mark, not measuring up. So it's understandable that you're having a reaction to this right now. Or maybe it's understandable that you're feeling hurt right now because that good friend that you had really been looking forward to seeing just canceled plans at the last minute. And maybe it's bringing up feelings of rejection, of hurt, of disappointment. Maybe it's bringing up thoughts of not feeling good enough and thinking that you care about them more than they care about you. It doesn't matter what is going on right now. We're just going to show ourselves compassion for whatever it is. Or maybe you're feeling really anxious right now that your boss just sent you a message saying that he wanted or she wanted to meet with you. And you're feeling all this surge of anxiety showing up and just like flooding you with anxiety because you're not sure what's going to happen in that meeting. And maybe it's understandable that you're feeling a little bit afraid right now because there were some times when you were younger when a person in authority called you in, or maybe it was a parent or a teacher or a principal or something, wanted to meet with you or called you over and then reprimanded you and called you down and criticized you. And so it's bringing up those feelings, it's bringing up those memories, those past experiences, and that's what it's triggering right now. That makes sense. That's understandable. So we're not judging. We're not saying the feelings are right or wrong. We're just saying this is what's happening, and there's probably a reason for it, and probably that reason is understandable, so we're going to show ourselves compassion and understanding for our human experience in that moment. After you have done this, you've kind of found the ground underneath your feet again. You're paying attention to what's going on, giving yourself compassion for what's going on. Something else is going to be really helpful as a next step is writing down whatever thoughts are going through your head. So you've just been spending some time becoming aware of the thoughts that are creating these big surges, this big surge of emotions. And now I want you to write down those thoughts. Right? Just do like a brain dump. It doesn't have to sound great. It doesn't have to be worthy of like a Pulitzer Prize or anything. Just get those thoughts down on a Google Doc, on a piece of paper, right? Like when this person canceled plans at the last minute, it made me feel blah, 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 blah. It brought up thoughts about blah, 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 blah. You know, whatever that is. Or when my coworker, you know, when the coworker said that we needed to review my contribution, it made me feel not good enough. It brought up thoughts around like not measuring up and not feeling good enough, and, you know, messages that my parents used to tell me about not measuring up to other kids, or even whatever that is. You can go as far back as you want. You don't have to go back to childhood. You don't have to go back to other stuff, but just saying what thoughts it brought up, what feelings it brought up for you, just getting that out on paper and being able to see that. And then after you've written down whatever it is that was going through your head on the piece of paper or on your screen, I want you to go through everything that you wrote down and pull out any thoughts or any sentences in there, any statements that are just inaccurate. Ones that are based on sort of the emotion in the moment that may have been sort of these overarching statements that are just not true. So if on there you had the thought, I am a loser, after your friend, you know, canceled on you at the last minute, being able to look at that statement and be like, okay, am I really a loser? Does someone canceling on me at the last minute make me a loser, make me a reject, make me unlovable? Is that entirely true? Like just being able to go through and pull out that statement and be like, okay, that may have been an emotion-based thought, right? That was sort of clouded by my emotion in the moment. It's not entirely true. And so being able to pull that out. Or if it's about your mom came over to see your new place and she made some kind of comment on the curtains or the couch and it brought up this big surge of emotion and you got really kind of reactive to her statement, and you realized after you've written down, because you had the thought, I'm never good enough for her. I can never do anything that's good enough for her. She's never going to be happy with me, which maybe means that I'm not good enough and I, you know, can't get it. I can't get it together. That I'm a failure, whatever that is, right? Pulling out those statements and again, being able to look at that and being able to identify sort of these all or nothing or overgeneralization, black and white thinking, these like hyperbolic statements that are perhaps not entirely true. And then after you've written down those thoughts on a piece of paper, onto the screen, I want to invite you to start going through whatever it is that you wrote down and looking for any thoughts that you are having that are just not true. Any thoughts that are inaccurate in some way, any thoughts that are distorted or destructive or unfair. I want you to start pulling out those thoughts. So if you have the thought that like, oh, I can never get anything right. Well, that's just not true, because you've probably gotten at least a few things right in your life sometime, at some point. Or if the thought is, you know, nobody cares about me. Also not true. I'm sure there are some people that care about you, even if whoever, you know, said the thing or did the thing, it seemed really uncaring what they did. You can't sort of generalize to everyone that because this one person did this thing that you thought was uncaring, that then all of a sudden that means nobody cares about you. Or if it's about feedback with something with work and you're like, I can't do anything right. Right? So looking at that and being like, okay, like chances are I have done a few things right in my life, and being able to look at it like that. So pulling out those thoughts and just being like, okay, where are some thoughts from this that are not perhaps entirely accurate, that are kind of emotion-based from the moment, but that I want to take a closer look at and maybe, consider the fact that they're not entirely true. And then what we want to do is, I've already sort of talked about that, is look for exceptions to the thought. So if it's like, nobody ever wants me around, right? If someone like cancels on you at the last minute, you're like, I'm a reject, nobody wants me around. Being able to say like, okay, am I a reject, first of all? And does nobody ever want me around? And are there some people that do want me around? Is it true that this actual friend who canceled, that we have often spent really great times together and really connected, and it's been very clear that they do want me around? Or if it's your thought is like, I'm such a failure at work, I can't do anything right? And looking at it and be like, okay, maybe because this project was given back and I need to keep working on it, I'm disappointed about that and that didn't go the way that I wanted. And I could call that a failure, but it's probably not a failure. It's probably just not completely filled out yet. It's not completely rounded out yet. There's more that needs to be done to it. It's incomplete. So is that a failure? Or is that just something I need to go back to and work on some more? And is it true that everything that I do fails? Have there been several times where I have submitted a project or taken on a task and I've seen it to the end and it's been well received and it's gone well and everything's been okay, right? So looking for some alternate perspectives, looking for more responsible thinking in that and challenging some of those thoughts and coming up with perhaps more fair or accurate thoughts to whatever it is that triggered that big emotional response in the first place. So that's really what we want to be working on. And you're going to notice that after you go through this process and take your time with it, you might need a little bit of time, especially when you're first doing this work, that you're going to feel a lot calmer afterwards. First of all, just the deep breaths and kind of getting the ground underneath your feet again and being able to connect more with your rational conscious brain, that in and of itself can make a huge difference. And that might even be where you can stop. You're like, okay, I see that I was freaking out. I see that my thoughts were inaccurate. I see that what was going on was far less, significant than my brain was making it out to be. I can kind of release this. I can move through this. I don't need to get stuck on this. I'm okay, right? My brain was just having a moment and I'm okay. And you can move through it from that point forward. But you might need to, especially if you're newer to this, really go through the process. Really go through giving yourself the compassion, creating that space, looking at the thoughts going through your head, and then looking at some different angles or actually challenging those thoughts and seeing where the irrationality or the irresponsibility or the distortions in those thoughts are. Right? Turning ourselves not into just positive thinkers. It's not what we're going for. We're going for more responsible thinking. How can I see this more accurately, even though my brain is sort of like globbing onto this certain situation and making it this big thing and making it mean all of these things about me that are bringing up all of these big emotions that I'm having a hard time coping with. So that's what we're going to do. And also what you're going to do is you're going to learn how to do this more and practice this in my book, Drive Your Own Darn Bus. Like I mentioned before, I teach you how to do this. I walk you through how to manage triggers, how to manage your thoughts, take you through a 5-step process that's going to allow you to take a step back no matter whoever or whatever is going on and be able to break down what is happening, what's happening with you when the thing is happening, and then what you can do about it to get yourself out of the emotional free fall or the thoughts spinning uncontrollably that bring you into a really bad or dark or unhelpful or angry or hurt or upset or whatever it is, whatever place that is that feels terrible. Help to prevent you from going there and getting you quickly back out of it if you do start to go there. That's what I teach you in my book, Drive Your Own Darn Bus. We cover lots of topics. We cover thought management, emotional processing, things like people pleasing and boundaries, about how to build a strong, healthy relationship with yourself, how to manage anxiety when it comes up, even for a specific reason, something makes you anxious, or just sort of out of nowhere. What do you do when you just go into anxiety for no reason? And seeing how all of these things are interconnected and what to do to be the driver of your own thoughts and emotions, no matter whoever or whatever is going on around you. Hence the name, Drive Your Own Darn Bus. Being the director of your own journey and your own path every single day. So that book is available all major retailers. You just type it in. You can go to Amazon. I think Amazon all over the world carries it. Barnes and Noble, Chapters Indigo. A lot of places carrying it all over the world. You can grab my book. Become the driver of your own bus. Let me know, what did you find helpful in this video talking about triggers? Would love to hear in the comment section below. As always, it is so good to have you here. Take good care of yourself.